Hey everybody, how you guys doing? It's been a while since we've done a live stream. So, in fact, it's been since Tailhook about 3 weeks ago. So, I just thought I'd catch up with you guys. Got the guitar here. So, before we get going, as always, if you're not already a subscriber, click the button and ring the bell and become one so you don't miss anything. So before we get to the topic at hand, this is for the guitars out there. So Keith Richards, guitarist for the Rolling Stones, is great because he uses alternate tunings a lot. So alternate tunings will set you free. So this guitar, this Les Paul standard, is currently tuned to open E. So what you might know is a normal guitar in 440, what we call, is top to bottom, E, A, D, G, B, E. That's how you would tune a guitar. Now, this one is tuned to open E, which is E, D. Oh, let me try to get this right. E, D, E, G flat, and B, E, right? So that's what so it sounds like an E chord basically when you strum it open. So see if you recognize this song. Let me tilt the guitar, the camera down a little bit here. Okay, so. All right, so we know what song that is, right? Got it. Yeah, Ben, you got it. Rick's got it. All right, so now that's open E, right? So that's what makes that song so powerful. If you try to play it with standard tuning, it sounds bad. All right, so let's try this other guitar. Now this one is tuned to open G. So this is the Rickenbacker. So open G. So again, instead of E, A, D, G, B, E, this one is tuned D, A, D. Oh, let me make sure I get this. No, it's D, G, D, G, B, D. Okay, so that's what it sounds like when you just bar it. Okay, so here's a song you know. Right? So that is open G. So alternate tunings will set you free. That's the bottom line here. All right. So I titled this episode, and I know a lot of guys are wondering what the heck's going on. And so it's about all things come to an end, but things also begin. So basically, my adult life is 5 chapters, and I want to talk about each one of those very briefly. I'm going to try to keep your questions in my scan here. Thank you, my good friend Rick Beato, for the super chat. And Rick factors into this story, as some of you know. There's our good friend Tom Butwin is here. He's the creator of the outro theme, you guys know. It's a brilliant melding of The Who and Top Gun. I thank Tom quite a bit for that. It's become the signature end of every episode. So 5 chapters. The first one is basically the root note of this channel, which is naval aviation. So I was lucky enough to be able to fly Tomcats as my job for, the majority of my 20 years of service, certainly 16 of those 20 years. Here's a picture of my original RAG class. Some notable folks on there. Some of them are no longer with us. The front row, third from the left, kneeling, is Matt Colombo. Punk's wing is dedicated to Matt. He was killed in the backseat of an F-14 doing an air show practice. His wedding invitation was on my kitchen table when I got the news that he had been killed. His pilot was also a good friend of mine, a guy named Bill Davidson, who was a year ahead of me at the Naval Academy in my company. Top row, fifth from the left, TJ Ruffo is also no longer with us. TJ died during routine surgery, hernia surgery. He died in post-op, and he was an amazing guy, and kind of the informal leader of us all. I had known TJ since the first day of plebe summer. He was the guy that looked over and said, "Hey, we got to know everybody's hometowns. What's your hometown?" He was that guy. He always knew the gouge. But the thing that was unique about this RAG class is all of the Rios in the class were Naval Academy classmates. The guy front row, third from the right, kneeling, Bill Sizemore. He was top stick. I was top scope. We got to shoot our first missile together. And then we came back into the break at 500 knots, which is something that you don't do at Oceana anymore. Those are the good old days. If you guys remember the secret program behind the secret program episode, I talk about the guy I flew the constant peg missions with. Front row, all the way to the right, is Fred Knox, call sign Truck. He was the guy who said, when we got back from that hop, he was the guy who said, "I think there's something else going on besides just the MiGs." So here's another rare photo. This is me on we're behind Cat 3 on the John F. Kennedy, doing, isn't quite an Alert 5, it's more like an Alert 7. I'm flying with the skipper at the time, Commander Vodka Gemmel. He made Admiral later. And he and I flew a lot together. So this is in VF-32. So chapter 1 was, a great chapter. I got to fly airplanes. I got, as I've shown you guys before, my logbook right here. And did all kinds of cool jobs. The Navy was very good to me, as we say, in that they let me fly a lot. And, you can see the plaques over here of all the various fighter squadrons and CAG ops. So at the time, I had my final cat shot in the late winter of 1998. I was CAG ops, and I got to fly back into the fly-in with VF-102. And I was actually in CAG's back seat. And so I didn't know at the time that would be my last CAD shot, the last carrier ops I was ever going to do. I knew I had orders to the Naval Academy as my follow-on shore tour, but I did not know that my carrier-based life was over. So, as I think about it now, I don't know what I would have done differently. Taken more pictures, had the CAD officer take a video of it, something else to commemorate the moment. But at that time, I was thinking about getting home to see my wife and and sons, at the end of a long deployment. I didn't think about, well, maybe some years later I would have the occasion to document this event. So I finished up, as I've said before, at the Naval Academy teaching. And during the course of that, I finished a book, which you guys are aware of. So this is the hardcover version of Punk's War, published by the Naval Institute Press back in 2001. Little did I know how much this book would change my post-Navy life. So more on that in a second. So Chapter 1, Naval Aviation. Documented it on this channel a number of times. But my point is that when that came to an end, it wasn't like an exclamation point. I didn't realize that I'd never go back to an aircraft carrier. So now Chapter 2 is I'm a government spokesperson for the V-22 program. Now, this was a job that I took, what I viewed as sort of a day job, because of the success of Punk's War, I was under a multi-book contract, a multi-book deal with Penguin Putnam to write Punk's Wing, Punk's Fight, and then the two other books in my fiction roster, which is The Aid and Militia Kill. So I viewed this job with the V-22 as just a day job, because writing was lucrative, but not quit your day job kind of lucrative. And, I thought at some point I'd be able to be a full-time writer, but in any case, I worked on the V-22, and these were what we call the war years of the V-22 program, meaning I got there fall of 2002, and I was there for 3 years until the Milestone 3 decision in 2005. Milestone 3 is when the airplane is approved for full-rate production. So it went through OPAVAL and the other things. So when the airplane was returned to flight, it had a terrible reputation, which it had quite frankly earned through a number of high visibility crashes that killed 30 Marines. So there was one in the desert of Marana during a training exercise where they got into the high rate of descent thing. Basically, the airplane was in deep stall. Lead airplane hit. Everyone was killed. Trail airplane. The pilot recognized the situation and managed to roll the nacelles forward in time to just hit enough to save everybody's life. The airplane was damaged beyond repair. Then some months later at New River, North Carolina, pilot mismanages a warning light and basically keeps putting the prop rotor pitch to 0 by trying to punch out a light and flies into the swamp. 4 guys killed. At that point, the program was shut down. Add into that, there was some maintenance malpractice and other command malpractice at the OPAVAL squadron, VMMT 203, or was it 204? And so the airplane shut down, and the idea is that it's going to be canceled. But the Marine Corps, being a very powerful organization with a lot of powerful folks who are interested in ways forward, kept it alive. So long story short, it was shut down for 2 years. I come back right as the airplane is returned to flight as the spokesman for this airplane that has a terrible reputation. So during the 3 years that I was on this program, it was basically a master's, if not PhD, in defense acquisition and procurement, which I knew nothing about. I'd just been a fleet guy. I'd never been at the systems command. I wasn't a test pilot guy. I'd never really dealt with industry except the tech reps from Grumman. Before there was Northrop Grumman, there was Grumman and Hughes, who made the AUG-9. So that's all I knew were those guys, those subject matter experts who would come and tell us, okay, you need to do this or tweak this. I had never dealt with industry at the corporate level. And so V-22 has 2 prime contractors, Bell and Boeing. Bell, sleepy little company that built the Huey. That was kind of their thing. And Boeing, a company that was pretty much state of the art. And so they came together and did a little cross-pollination and figured out how to make the V-22 into a fleet asset. So got to see a lot of that when the Amarillo factory came online. I was right there, got to fly the airplane, got to deal with both the developmental test team and the operational test team, VMX-22, with Bluto Walters, then a colonel, later the assistant commandant for aviation as a 3-star. So my point is that job was a lot more than I thought it was going to be. Like I said, I entered into it thinking, oh yeah, just a day job so I can keep writing. But it was really an amazing, amazing thing to see how that airplane was proved out. I got to fly it later, which is my next chapter, which is because of this book. Came to the interest of a guy who founded a little website called military.com, which remains the biggest military affinity site on the web. I met Chris Michael we were both on a hiring committee at the Naval Institute to pick the new CEO back in 2003. And Chris was amazing. So it was Chris and me were the young guns put on that panel with 3 admirals, 2 retired, including Stan Arthur, legendary Vietnam era A4 pilot, who was later vice chief of naval operations. So it was Admiral Arthur, Admiral Beers, and Admiral Natter, who was still on active duty as Cinquelant Fleet. So I was amazed by the questions that Chris would ask the candidates who wanted to be the CEO of the Naval Institute. I'm like, who is this guy who was a standard naval aviator who is now worth quite a bit of money and has founded this fledgling website? So in 2003, the internet was still kind of new, right? This is pre-social media. So fast forward a year, and I see Chris again at Admiral Mullen's change of command when he was taking over as the CNO. And I worked for Admiral Mullen when I was CAG Ops back on George Washington, remained close to him to this day. So we're at the change of command at the Naval Academy, and I run into Chris, and he goes, hey, you got to come out to San Francisco because I want to talk to you. I'd never been to San Francisco. So I took him up on the offer in 2005 because the V-22 program, once you had the full rate production decision, it was instantly not a controversial program. So as the spokesman, my phone stopped ringing. The job was getting a little boring, and I was not interested in just having a day job. So I wound up going to San Francisco, and Chris made an offer. And so we were not interested in moving to San Francisco. Turns out that Chris only needed me out in San Francisco for 1 week a month, and sometimes 2, like during Fleet Week or whatever. And I was put up in the Palomar Hotel, which was right across the street from military.com's headquarters on 4th and Market, 799 Market. At that time, military.com had the entire 7th floor of 799 Market. The Palomar was right across the street. So that was my home for the time I was out there. And considering some of the BOQs that I lived in over the years in the Navy, this was really top shelf stuff. Chris was a patron and a citizen of San Francisco. He knew how to do that city. And so I was introduced to San Francisco. We were major sponsors in Fleet Week, San Francisco, which was a really fun time. And he also taught me through kind of tough love how to make the internet grow and work. And it had little to do with the fact I had, so many hours in the F-14. That didn't matter. And so that was my MBA. So once I got my legs under me, we were growing that site. And then social media came online and we embraced it. Podcasts. I was an early adopter of podcasts. I had a Gen 1 podcast called From the Editor's Desk, and I got to talk to all kinds of people, General Petraeus, Stephen Colbert, authors, rock stars like Rick Nielsen, and so forth and so on, and had a fantastic time in that job, and really did start to learn how to be a .commer, a very unorthodox thing for a guy with my pedigree. Again, this is a function of this book pivoted my post-Navy life in a way that is unorthodox. I was able to go to Afghanistan for a month in 2010 and embedded with the 101st Airborne. And then I went down south, flew the V-22 with the Marines at Bastion and hung out at Camp Leatherneck. And we came back, and our last evolution was to do an interview with General Mcchrystal. I went there with my managing editor, Christian Lowe. And our last evolution was an interview with General Mcchrystal. Ironically, just a few weeks before he was fired for that Rolling Stone article. And it was interesting because his PAOs were bragging that they were talking to us, this little old military.com. They're like, we'll talk to anybody. In fact, a couple of weeks ago, we talked to Rolling Stone magazine. So little did they know how that would play out at that time. So like all good things, that came to an end. Chris and his partner Ann left military.com. The parent company hired a retired one-star to take over. And, to be candid, wasn't as fun as when Chris was there. And so I soldiered on, and eventually I got the opportunity to continue in the .com and leave San Francisco and go to Hollywood, literally Hollywood, where I worked at a startup called We Are the Mighty. So some of you may be familiar with We Are the Mighty. We Are the Mighty was founded by two MTV alums, and they were interested in starting a military affinity property. And they hired a marketing guy who had been the VP of marketing at military.com, Wes Pointer, who said, you've got to get Ward. And the timing was great because I was ready for a change. After 9 years at military.com, it was time for something new. And so this was my first no-lie startup experience. And so we were literally, first office was in a Hollywood Boulevard. It was like that Welcome to the Jungle, Guns N' Roses video where Axl gets off the bus. Am I back? Sorry, guys. Sorry about that. I lost shit. I didn't eject. The internet has been wonky here at the house. As it were, super groups are tough. And so wound up leaving after 2 years at We Are the Mighty. Fantastic experience, startup experience. And I took over a website here in Annapolis, a military spouse website, and then propped that one up for acquisition. And ironically, that site was acquired by Task and Purpose. So I didn't want to work for another parent company. So I wound up entering the fourth chapter of my working life, which is accepting an opportunity at the Naval Institute. Now, I've spoken about the Naval Institute a number of times here on the channel. It's a not-for-profit that has been around since 1873, and they published the Punk's War, the original edition, the first time back in 01. I've contributed to Proceedings magazine, which is their flagship magazine, 8 times on active duty. Had been a member of the Naval Institute since 1989, but I'd never been on the staff. So, kind of been an adjunct member of the staff, but never been on the core staff. So now I'm on the core staff doing a whole bunch of jobs, marketing and outreach, which allowed me to go out and talk to the fleet, which was a blast. And also got to talk to mids a bunch and started the internship program and one of the extracurricular activities that we work on for the Naval Academy. So it's just a really rewarding job. And that I love it when the organization you work for has a mission that's bigger than you. If you look at the issues of Proceedings from 1874 till now, you've got all the bylines of the names on the buildings: Luce, Nimitz, Mahan, Rickover. They've all written for Proceedings through the years. So that was an amazing sort of opportunity. But now, during the course of this, I met a guy who maybe some of you know, named Rick Beato. And so Rick is a varsity major league YouTuber. And his channel has more than, I'm trying to put up the asset here. There we go. His channel, as you can see, has 3.1 million subscribers. And we became friends because I followed his channel. We started chatting via text, and then he actually was in Annapolis, and we realized we're brothers from different mothers. And so while we're sitting there at McGarvey's here in Annapolis, he asked me, "Why do you do so much Twitter? Why don't you have a YouTube channel?" And I said, "Well, I have a YouTube channel, but it's kind of a repository for family B-roll. My nephew's eating a chocolate egg at Christmas time, or dog show videos of, my wife handling one of our dogs over the years or whatever. And he says, well, you need to see if you can't have a YouTube channel. I'm like, well, what do? I don't know what to do. He goes, well, just talk into your phone. I mean, literally talk into your phone for 10 or 15 minutes. So I started that. And some of my early episodes, I was doing all kinds of stuff like, have you been gerrymandered? Right. I realized that my district, which is this one in the center of this thumbnail, was ridiculous shape. It's the Maryland 3rd District. They call it a smash spider. Right. And then I did this thing about, America hacked by Russia. And I was doing some other odds and ends, like here's how I play guitar as a sort of a chord banger. Here's how I had my first novel published, and et cetera, those kinds of things. Then nothing was really catching on. I was actually, moaning to Rick that it doesn't look like I'm going to be a YouTuber because, 40 people per episode is not really setting the world on fire. And then I did the episode in the middle of all these, and I've showed this thumbnail before, called The Truth About Goose and the F-14. Or no, it's called The Truth About the F-14 and Goose's Death. So it's just me, as you guys have seen in a couple episodes, it's just me holding this model and talking about the Tomcat flat spin characteristics and how Goose didn't do step 7 of the bold-face procedures, which is canopy jettison, then Rio command eject. Right? So you guys remember that one? So it sat there for literally, I posted that one originally about Christmas time in 2020, right? 2020. It sat there. And so I'm doing some other episodes about, the transition between administrations and different stuff. And again, I did a thing about the West Point cheating scandal, which was my biggest one. It had 1,400 views. And at that time, that seemed like a lot. And then I was just soldiering on. I was pretty prolific, doing about 3 or 4 episodes a week. No post-production. Just before I was using any post-production software, iMovie or Final Cut Pro or whatever. And so, it's just me, one take Jake, thinking out loud for upwards of 20 minutes. And then finally, in mid-April of 2021, without me doing anything, I start getting these notifications that the Goose's Death episode is starting to be viewed a lot. In fact, on April 18th of 2021, that episode was viewed 90,000 plus times. And so I call Rick and I'm like, what is going on? And he said, well, this is what I told you would happen. At some point, the algorithm, not human beings, but the algorithm will figure out what's your subject matter expertise is, what's your lane. And so this is what has happened. So I said, what do I do now? He goes, well, the audience gets a vote. And now I know you're trying to do a lot of things at once, but I think you're now going to have an aviation channel. So that was great. That was actually great news. Thanks, JT, for the super thanks, your super chat. Appreciate it. Or I guess it's a super thanks, right? Super chat. Thank you, JT. Appreciate it. And then to answer the question, I would love to. I'm a big fan of Growling Sidewinder. I know his name came up a lot with the final dogfight analysis episode. So yeah, I'm not opposed to that, and we'll do something for sure. I'm still in the process of getting my act together fully in DCS, but yeah, we'll definitely do something. So as you guys have seen, I started doing, a rapid fire creation of aviation content, starting with Tomcat stories, right? And so the first major big deal Tomcat story that I had is actually my first million view episode was this one. right? The real truth about Kara Holt Green's F-14 Tomcat mishap. Now, in doing this one, first thing I do when I think about doing an episode is I type in the title or the keywords, Kara Holt Green mishap, into YouTube to see what other people have done and make sure I'm not doing something that's wildly sort of redundant. And in the case of this mishap, there was one episode that it sounded like a computer voice. It sounded like an Asian voice, and it was animated. And the animation was wildly inaccurate. It showed the airplane doing a straight in. It did not show any of the actual things that had happened. So based on that, I was like, okay, let me just try my hand at explaining from a fleet aviator's perspective what happened here. And so that was the first episode that as soon as I hit public, it was a rocket ship, because a YouTube content creator has what we call the back end, where you can watch in real time the views. And it's amazing and nerve-wracking. So basically, and this is a gross generalization, but in about 15 minutes, if you have something that's going to be above your normalized curve, what Rick calls the hurricane. It's like the projected path of a hurricane. So that's like R max and R min envelope that shows, it's this axis is views, this axis is time. So it shows how your trajectory is, and you can tell early on. And sometimes you have an episode that is a slow starter. Here's a good episode. This one was a dog out of the gate. And literally a month later, it became a rocket ship. And now it's one of my highest, it's 1.3 million, I think, is how many views it's had, right? And this is another example of how I've opened the aperture of subject matter and sort of tested the waters of viewership to see what you guys will tolerate me talking about, quite frankly, right? So as folks have been with me from the beginning, and basically when I posted that Goose's death episode, I had 8 subscribers. And in short order, I had 100,000, and I have my what we call the play button for 100,000. It's I'm very proud of that plaque right here is on my I Love Me wall. I'm as proud of that as I am of my squadron plaques. And you don't get another one till 1 million, right? So I got a ways to go for that if I ever get there. But this growth was just amazing. And so as you get that sort of affirmation, and you guys have been fantastic with the comments are 50% of the equation in YouTube. And I've had commenters comment on how erudite my community is, and I concur 100%. You guys keep me honest. It's generally productive. I also have tools to jettison people who are unproductive. I want to keep politics out of it. I want to keep it productive. There's some things if you type in, it just won't show up. So if you're wondering why, for instance, Let's Go Brandon doesn't show up, it's because I've put it in the back end. If you type that in, it just won't show up. And other things, again, I'm not taking one side or the other. I'm just saying that this channel is about a celebration of military aviation, starting with the F-14 Tomcat, carrier aviation, all aviation, military aviation. And then the other thing that you've allowed me to do is venture into things like history. And so I can talk about Air Force greats like Robin Olds, which that was a lot of fun to research him. I wish I'd had an opportunity to meet him, if not work for him. And then some folks that I've known for a long time, like Sandy Winnefeld, to be able to, do kind of a de facto oral history of his life, his career, is just kind of a gift. That's why this forum is very important to me. And I'm not going to hazard it. Rick and I sometimes were brainstorming on what else could we do. And it was his idea to do something about Area 51. But as you guys know from my episode about Area 51, this isn't a sensational, there's aliens at Area 51. If you do the research on what actually is the genesis of Area 51, it's an amazing story about two airplanes and black programs, the U-2 and the A-12, which later became the SR-71, right? So, and that episode did well. And I'm proud to not be sensational, but just be sort of matter of fact and historical about why Area 51 existed, just like I was able to do with the Tonopah and the secret program behind the secret program. I've done some listicles that we call, here's the all-time greatest fighter airplanes, or here's the 10 aces of aces. I'll be doing some more of these coming up. And then the current events like, the war in Ukraine has allowed me to do some episodes where I can give my 2 cents about what's going on there. This episode surprised me by how many views it had. And as you guys who are regular viewers know, we've been able to have some subject matter experts like David Axe and our good friend Justin Bronk on. And it's been amazing to, make him part of the channel. We're going to have him on, coming attractions. He's going to be on this coming Monday. We'll do an update about the war in Ukraine. We'll certainly talk about this 300,000, draft, and what is this doing to the occupied regions, the separatist regions, and where is Putin now as a function of these, and what is happening domestically in Russia as a function of this draft. Really interesting stuff. And as you guys know, Justin always has an amazing and a very sage outlook. He's smart beyond his youth, as we know. And it turns out I'm probably going to get to meet him in person here. He's going to be coming to DC before too long, and that'll be amazing. And we'll do an episode when we're face to face. So as a function of all of these things, the growth of this channel, and this has been more protracted than maybe my other chapters in terms of the dismount. So as I said, chapter 4 was working at a not-for-profit, the Naval Institute, as a director of a few departments there, a labor of love. I owe the Naval Institute a lot. And during the course of that, I actually started this YouTube channel, both because Rick said, hey, you should try it, but also it was a proof of concept to grow the Naval Institute's YouTube channel, quite frankly. And employing Rick's best practices, things like thumbnails, things like titles, not clickbait, because you guys won't let us get away with clickbait, but titles, and then killer content that keeps folks watching, because the algorithm will punish the creator if you're doing clickbait. So let's say I do a title like this one where you guys thought I was going to quit the channel, right? That's kind of why you would, click on something that says all things come to an end. And so what I'm really talking about is chapter 4 has come to an end. Chapter 5, which is Mooch as full-time YouTuber, is just starting. So basically, my last evolution as an employee at the Naval Institute was Tailhook a couple of weeks ago. And quite frankly, my presence at the booth netted out as a negative, because all of the folks there wanted to talk about the channel. And they didn't want to talk about the Naval Institute. So next year, I'll have my own booth at the Naval Institute at Tailhook. So, keep your eyes open for that. If you're in Reno, I'd love to see you. It's not just for Tailhook members. The Tailhook convention is open to all comers. It's an amazing gathering of folks. But that was it. So now had a very cool going away event at the Naval Institute. They showed Top Gun Maverick in their brand new theater complex there with Dolby sound. It was an amazing viewing, and a lot of the folks on the team had not ever seen it before. And then we had a nice reception. So that was my dismount completely. So now I'm fully focused on creating YouTube content and the other things around it. I'm going to do more editions of the Mooch Report for my patrons. So if you're not a patron, consider becoming one. You can become a patron for as little as $1, $5. Patrons get all kinds of cool benefits like Zoom happy hours every Friday afternoon Eastern time. We have folks beaming in from New Zealand and Germany, and we endeavor to solve all the world's problems every week. It's a great gathering. And then we do Muchapaloozas, or in-person events where I get to meet these folks that I've only known virtually, and that is an amazing phenomenon as well. These people have turned out to be some of my best friends these days. So it's really, really rewarding. But the bottom line is, I just want to thank all of you for giving me this opportunity to have a YouTube channel and to make it my full-time focus. And I will not take that for granted. We've just started. And so what we want to do from this point forward is deeper dives. We want to get it even more right. I will not do clickbait. I will not be sensational. I'm not Mr. Beast. You won't see a frenetic, massive amount of edits and bright colors, and I won't scream at the top of my lungs. So I know some people are like, this guy's boring. Well, I'm just going to kind of keep it straight down the middle. It'll be Mooch talking about something that generally is of consequence, and me giving my interpretation, or me explaining why, or teeing up the history. And we've had a great run to date. If you had told me a year and a half ago that this would have the opportunity to do this, that I would close that chapter and open this one, chapter 5, I would have asked you how that is at all possible. But now that I have the opportunity, I'm not going to take it for granted. So let me look at a few comments here. So again, thanks to you guys. Thanks to American Warhorse for the super chat. Thanks to Addicted. Do I know Ned Smith? I don't know Ned Smith. Apologize for that. So, you know, these live chats are amazing because of you guys. I want to do more of them more often. Again, I apologize for the wonky internet. They worked on our internet out on the telephone pole, in front of the studio, and it hasn't been right since. So, thank you, Xfinity. Thank you, Bernie. Keep up the great work. Great video. Appreciate that consideration. Thanks to Bad Weather Biker. How about you guys try to play some Robert Fripp guitar? Well, Rick is good enough to do that. I am not. As you can see, I'm just a glorified chord banger. Now, not to get ahead of the process, but Rick and I intend to do an episode on his channel of doing, as he does, what makes this song great. We're going to do a deep dive on the 2 Top Gun soundtracks. So that'll be on his channel coming up. Not sure when. It's a matter of us getting our calendars lashed up. As you guys may know, I was on his Rick Beato 2 channel last year, about a year ago. And we were talking about 10 perfect albums. So if you haven't seen that episode on his channel, check it out. That one's a real fun one. I guess that's it for now. I appreciate this. Has been a huge turnout. I really appreciate you guys showing up and adding your thoughts. Again, more to follow. As I said, we'll have Justin Bronk on Monday. I just did an interview with Hill Goodspeed, the editor of Hook Magazine. As I said at the outset, he does 100 years of aircraft carriers. That's a cool episode. In about 45 minutes, he goes through the first 100 years of the aircraft carrier, U.S. aircraft carrier. So it's very cool. Chris says, you have access, we don't. How about take the channel on some hops with hurricane hunters? Aerial reviewers, ride on an Osprey, interview the crews. Love that idea. Rock on, bro. We will do that. No doubt. So that's going to happen more and more, right? It'll be Mooch on the road. I got my road rig, just like you saw interviewing Nasty and Bio at Tailhook. If you look at the production value from Tailhook last year to this year, it's orders of magnitude better, and we'll just keep getting better and better until I'm doing 7 camera shoots with a crew like we used to do at We're the Mighty. That seems a long way off, and I'm kind of liking the lo-fi one man, one video kind of thing so far, but we'll keep it growing. Marcus, thanks for the super sticker. All right. So again, as always, thanks you guys. As I said before, if you're not already a subscriber, then become one, so you don't miss anything like we're talking about. Here, let me get my subscription thing going on here. Click the button, ring the bell, and let's put Victor up here. Victor, have to get you El Toro for an episode on the Flying Leatherneck Museum. So yes, Victor approached me, where was that? At West in San Diego, talking about, he was at the first Muchapalooza San Diego. So Victor is running this Flying Leatherneck Museum down in, would that be Tustin, Victor, down in Orange County, where I was actually born. And remember, my dad was in an A4 squadron in Tustin. But they're putting together the Flying Leatherneck Museum, so we'll be covering that as the news becomes available. So stay tuned for more on that. Alex, thank you very much for that consideration. Very much appreciate it. All right, guys, more to follow. Like I said, this is just the beginning, and so Chapter 5 starts now. And in the meantime, I look forward to talking to you again very soon.